So I got a joke for you.
All right.
How many nerds does it take to change a light bulb? Well, actually, just the one. But they have to say the well, actually first. That was funnier in my head.
Start the game already!
Well, actually, light bulbs don't exist in this lore. That was in episode 359, and not this particular series.
I reserve the right to laugh at that later when I've had much more to drink.
It's not very funny. I heard a joke. It was one of those sort of classic setups, and I'm like, how many nerds would it take to change a light bulb? And I caught myself actually thinking about it, right? Really thinking hard about how many nerds would it take to change a light bulb. And the conclusion I came to is no one would ever change the light bulb. They would just talk a lot about how, the history of light bulbs and how light bulbs work and why light bulbs need to be changed. And then they'd probably go off into the light bulb mafia. It's not mafia, it's the other thing. I've forgotten the word. But, like all the light bulb companies basically got together and said, this is how long a light bulb should last. Conspiracy theory that was actually true.
Mm-hmm. The important thing to consider is that they would be in the dark while they're discussing it, though.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year's, all of that.
Happy Festivus.
We took our holiday break, so it's been a little while since we've recorded. In the time since we last spoke, on the mic at least, I grew a beard. It got thick. I got sick of trimming it and trying to shape it because it was getting ratty. And then I shaved it off.
Wow. You went through like a whole evolution. This is not even your final form.
It's saying something for me because I do not grow a beard quickly or well. But it wasn't that bad.
Well, there you go. You're growing up.
More importantly, my wife wasn't totally opposed to it, which was probably more shocking than the beard itself.
Yeah. Have you checked your backyard for pods? Just in case?
So how you doing? What are you drinking?
I have less left than I did when I first started thinking that it might be a thing. I sent Cindy to the thing. So I have a Big Rig Tales from the Patch pumpkin porter. The can apparently glows in the dark. I don't know. It's not dark enough to really tell. It's not bad. It's a little out of season for pumpkin spice, but it's not bad.
I almost had pumpkin tonight. I had it in my hand, and then I put it back.
Uh-oh.
I wasn't feeling it. I'm still not sure what I'm going to drink. I got a couple up here. I'll probably drink them both. Just a boring Mott's Clamato Caesar. And then I've got County Cider Company Blackberry Peach.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah, they don't sound good together, but...
No, they do not.
I think I'm going to start with the Caesar.
Yeah, okay. Caesar has never been one of my favorite things. Mostly because I don't like tomato juice, and then you add clams to it, and I'm like, eh.
I think we've had this conversation about 4 times on the podcast.
And probably about 1,000 times outside of it.
Yeah.
That's one of those things, though, is that like nerds especially just love those jokes that go on and repeat, and it's almost like a member berry, right? Like I'm sure that we originally stole the joke from somewhere. Of, hey, you know what this drink really needs? Fish. But for some reason, it keeps coming up, and it makes both of us giggle every time. So,
well, because you always picture the whole milking clams thing, right?
Yes. Oh man, you got to find a stool that doesn't float, and then you got to get down to the bottom of the ocean. You got to milk the cloud. How do you gather it? It's just floating away on the ocean currents.
Hard on the back too. That's the real problem.
Oh man, yeah. Finding clams big enough. And then like, is it a boy clam or a girl clam? Is this milk or not?
These are the questions you have to ask.
I don't know, man. Make yourself a Caesar. It's delicious. Might be a little bit of clam cum in there.
Mmm.
Uh,
How was your Christmas?
Pretty good. We have a robot overlord that cleans the floors now. Uh, that was a gift from Cindy's mom. She's programmed it tonight, thankfully, to start at 9 instead of normally it would be running now, but it goes over like it's docked right over my head, and it's quiet when you're next to it, but when you're on the floor below, it is not quiet. I, of course, as previously mentioned, got new golf clubs a little bit before Christmas. That was a really, really big gift. My gift to Cindy this year was that she does not have to cook and or clean or do dishes this week. I'm doing all of that. Which
Wow.
she normally does that. And let me tell you something. When she does it, she makes it look like, hey, this is no big deal. When I do it, it's like, okay, I start at 9 o'clock in the morning for lunch. I finish cleaning up lunch. I immediately start cooking dinner. Yeah. She's very good at that stuff.
She is.
I'm not.
You're trying, and that's what's important.
I mean, I cook well. Don't get me wrong. Like I make 75% of the time I make edible food. The other 25% of the time I'm very good at ordering pizza. It's not like I don't organize myself well and I make every dish in the kitchen dirty.
Yeah.
And I hate doing dishes, right?
Have you busted out the pork and purple sauce yet?
I did actually make a modified purple sauce. Cindy still doesn't like it. So I made like a mushroom, a mushroom cabbage onion sauce. And I put a little bit of red wine in it, and it wasn't purple. It looked like gravy. It was kind of like a beef stroganoff kind of deal, but there was something in it that didn't quite make it good. Like it's what I had for dinner tonight. I didn't mind it. Cindy wasn't a fan.
Was it the purple?
No, she did not notice the purple, and we're not going to tell her. But she doesn't like red wine, right? And I didn't know that. Or maybe I haven't been paying attention, but she doesn't drink, right? We use alcohol in cooking sometimes, but she doesn't drink. So, I mean, this was the first time I think that she's actually told me straight out that she just doesn't like red wine. It comes off the list of things that I put in food, I guess. I made a chicken mushroom parmesan sauce over rice with chicken tonight. That went over pretty well because I managed to nail that one. Tacos tomorrow, spaghetti on Friday, and then I think hamburgers on Saturday, and then my responsibilities in that area are complete for a little while.
Yeah, cooking was kind of the highlight of my break too. I went out on Boxing Day and bought a pretty big turkey on sale.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically went out that day at a good time to make sure that I could get them because I knew that there'd be enough that they'd go reasonably quickly. It wasn't so much to have turkey in the traditional sense. I wanted the turkey sandwiches, and we had a little bit of leftovers from Christmas dinners up at the in-laws and whatnot. But I wanted, turkey sandwiches for days kind of thing. So I picked up it might have been just a hair over 12 kilo turkey for just Tanya and I, right?
God.
So massive.
That's like 30 pounds.
Yeah, I went all out. I brined it like I did a 2-day brine, a wet brine. And I didn't spatchcock it. I did more traditional unstuffed with a nice sage butter glaze. Turned out quite well. And I had it sort of packed up in the fridge. Like I basically stripped the carcass down after that night's dinner and had just the equivalent of like a bin that was taking up the whole bottom of the fridge filled with turkey. And like so much of it white meat too, right? Like normally like that'll be the thing. Tanya's all about the white meat. That'll be the thing that goes when we have turkey. And the bird was so plump in that area of the body. It skipped leg day and just, I must have bagged up individually a good solid, like this is just the meat stripped off the carcass and everything. There's still probably 4 kilos in bags in my freezer, gravy, frozen. I'm going to do like hot turkey sandwiches probably once every couple of weeks for 3 years.
That's a lot of turkey, man, especially for 2 people.
Oh, it was way too much, but it was a good deal. Like I got that 12 kilo for $33, I think I paid for it.
That's pretty good these days.
Well, considering you'd get one half the size the day before for 55, yeah.
Yeah, we've been very lucky in sort of like we freeze a lot of stuff. We started freezing vegetables this year, like most of the stuff that I'm cooking this week, the onions that go in it are coming out of the freezer, and they're great. We've got onions, we got cabbage, we got peppers. We tried freezing corn on the cob, and the texture is just weird, man. Like it
Yeah.
still tastes good. It's still tasty, but it's just, yeah. Like I don't like corn all that much anyway. Like I enjoy it a couple of times a year. You know, you have a feed of corn with lots of butter. And frozen, it's like, you know what? I don't love it enough to make the effort to figure out how to do it right. I know it can be done.
Well, and that's
Yeah.
the thing about corn is that the store-bought stuff that's properly flash frozen is so much better than botching freezing something that had started fresh and just slow
Exactly.
froze. And it's cheap enough, like at the grocery store. That's one thing that doesn't cost you an arm and a leg, so it's barely worth trying.
Yeah, well, we have a large Mennonite community up here, so we buy our produce from them, and it's about a tenth the price. So I mean, you've seen our fridge. We got a cabbage that did not fit in our fridge, and it was like $1.50.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and they do like cauliflower and broccoli and Brussels sprouts and carrots and turnips, and I mean, imagine a vegetable. They grow it, and it's cheap, right? They're making enough money to make them happy, and we don't have to pay shipping, freezing, storage, warehousing, overhead, advertising, and profit margin for Gale and Weston. So it's much better for everyone.
Shout out to Ian. This segment is for you. He hit me up, I don't know, a week ago. We were talking about something. I might have been talking about my turkey, and he was asking for the nutty food spin-off content. So here you go.
All right. Well, there we go. Maybe I'll share my spaghetti sauce recipe at the end.
So I was thinking when we were drafting the document for this show before Christmas break, we knew we were going to take some time off about like the nerdiest shit that we could talk about because we have our usual topics and whatnot. And I thought it'd be fun to throw the nerdiest of nerdy topics. And that was Tom Bombadil.
Uh-huh.
How long has it been since you read the books?
Oh, man. I think I still had hair.
So that's like 60 years or?
Fuck you. No, it's much closer to 30, but it's a long time since I actually read the books. The copies of I have good copies now, but the copies of the book that I last really read literally fell apart. I had to go hunting for, this page is missing. Oh, it's fallen under my bed. Okay. Read that, tape that together. You know, it was held together with a rubber band. I've read them several times though.
Well, this should be a great conversation because it's probably been 25 years since I read the books.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I've heard periodically come up anytime I talk about the movies.
Yep.
Famously, the Peter Jackson movies, which were very, very good, did not include the Tom Bombadil character. And I thought, based on what we can recall of him from the books, talk about whether we thought that was a good idea, a bad idea. Try and even remember who the hell Tom Bombadil was.
I think this is it is super nerdy. And I'm going to go off. I'm going to go off on a nerd rant here. I think I love Tom Bombadil. I think he might be one of my favorite characters in the books. I was sad not to see him in the movies, but if you think about what a movie is and what a movie has to do and how it tells a story, Tom Bombadil doesn't add anything to the story.
No,
he does. He does, however, add a whole bunch of deep background lore, sort of by inference, right? He doesn't come out and say it, but the fact that like he can put on the ring and nothing happens,
yeah,
right? That's a big deal. But because we at that point in the book, if you've read The Hobbit, you kind of know that it's a thing that makes you invisible, but you don't recognize what the power of the ring is yet. It doesn't seem like a big deal. It's just like, oh, okay, it doesn't work for him. No biggie. You know, and then if you know a little bit more about the background of all of that stuff, it's like, oh, wow, that is a really big deal.
Mm-hmm.
I need to shut my phone off because apparently people are just going to continually send me messages while I'm trying to record. So unprofessional.
So based on my recollection, the Tom Bombadil stuff happens before the Prancing Pony, right? Like it's not too long after they leave the Shire initially.
It's after they leave the Shire and before Gandalf leaves, I think, because Gandalf's there. No, he's not. He rescues them from the Willow, from Old
Yeah.
Man Willow. So yeah, it's before they reach the Prancing Pony in Bree. I got that right?
Yes. I believe so. That's my recollection.
Yes, because it's before they meet Aragorn, obviously, because he's not
Yes.
with them.
Yeah. So they arrive at Tom and what was his wife's name? Goldberry?
Something like that, yes.
I remember the whole couple of chapters being like a fever dream, a musical fever dream.
It's very different, and I think it would be so entertaining to see a movie adaptation of that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like, especially with the rest of the tone of those films, it would be such a departure. Like it would you'd be watching it along and going, and it would just ka-chunk you right out of your suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
It would immediately be like, this is a different movie.
And I think it speaks to like the difference between books and movies. I mean, obviously you've got, 2, 3, or if you're doing a trilogy, 9 hours or whatever to try and get through something. But you really need to decide when you're doing your adaptation what your narrative is, what your focus is. And I know Peter Jackson has said, like, very much his movies are about the central story of Frodo and the rings and the journey, and that whole part, especially as early, I guess, in the books as it is, doesn't advance that story much. It does a good job, and you can get away with it in books, of just showing how weird things are.
It's great world building.
Yeah, one of the things that has come out of the Tom Bombadil character and is that Tolkien doesn't explain anything about him, right? Like you read those and you have a million questions that never get answered, and that's intentional. And of course, the people like the real nerds that do a lot of theory crafting and stuff speculate and try and connect the dots and build theories about who he is. And there's probably about 42 theories that have some sort of weight and credence.
Tom Bombadil is actually mentioned, I think, in the Silmarillion. So we do know that he is the same thing or something similar to what Gandalf is. But whereas Gandalf is sort of wandering about and doing things over the whole world, he has this it's almost like a pocket dimension that he exists in. And that's why the ring doesn't affect him, is it's because no, this is my world. This is not actually part of the world. It's very similar to the myths of the Barrows of the Sylvan people. I think it's Germanic myth. You walk around at Widdershins 13 times, and then you enter the Fey realm, and yada yada yada.
Yeah, I know that there's. I have read some of the theories. Again, I haven't read the theories probably since 10 years, maybe 15 years. There's a lot of speculation that Tom is, if not the god of all things, an aspect of the god of all things. God, I can't even remember what the Iluvatar, something like that. Yeah. Speculation that Tom could be one of the Ainur, Valar, think like the archangel type characters, embodiment of the earth itself. I mean, he's sort of a stand-in character for Tolkien as the narrator or author of the book.
It's a lore dump, no doubt.
Yeah, speculation that he's like the embodiment of music, the song of the Ainur, or anyway, lots of shit. It doesn't fit in the movies. I guess that's, you've got 9 hours to put so much stuff in. There's a few things that are kind of important, right? Like the books series, very much, it's a struggle for power between good and evil, and Bombadil kind of represents that third perspective, that power and controller, and I'm kind of quoting Tolkien or paraphrasing stuff that he said, power and control are kind of meaningless. Unmoved by the ambitions and goals of the powerful. Like that's kind of what that whole fever dream part of it suggests to me. Finds joy in the small pleasures in life. And we have a central character that sort of brings that to the movies in Samwise.
Yeah. Yeah, very much. I agree with you there. I was just thinking to myself, like, what if you had like the Tom Bombadil sort of sequence in those movies? It would be like watching like an '80s action film, like Die Hard or Predator, something like that. And in the middle of it, there's a 15-minute Bollywood number. It would just be like it would be so different from the tone of the
Hmm.
rest of the movie that you would just think like, why is this here?
Hmm.
And that's kind of the point. The other thing I wanted to bring up is that I've been reading a bunch of stuff. Um, the last time we spoke, I was reading through The Expanse. I finished it. We'll talk about that later or another episode or whatever. But it got me thinking about the difference in style of writing and how it's evolved over the years. Like if you go back and read these books again, and I'm going based on, as we mentioned, like 25 or 30-year-old memories, like there's lots of descriptions of like general arcs of things. Like this is what this kingdom is like, and that's what that kingdom is like. And then there's dialogue, like people having conversations, and some sort of light description of, this is what this area is like. And modern books very much describe things like they want you to think of it like a movie. And I'm reading through Brendan Sanderson's The Mistborn series,
Hmm.
just about done. And I've noticed that like the description of things, it's like, his left hand did this and his right hand did that, while his fingers did this, and this is what the rings on his fingers looked like. And it's still good, right? Like I'm not saying one's good and one's bad. I'm just saying that they're very, very different in what they focus on. And in the context of the Lord of the Rings and the way that Tolkien wrote, the Tom Bombadil thing actually made sense because it was a description of a larger world, right? Like here's the Shire that the hobbits are familiar with, and here's them just getting out into sort of the larger world, and we're familiar with that idea. It's like leaving hometown to see the big city or whatever. And then he sort of throws this other thing in there that like, no, the world is much, much bigger and stranger than even you think it is. Right. And it's important for us, the reader, to understand that this is not just them walking out of the Shire into the countryside to go visit the big city. This is them walking out of the Shire into, oh, holy shit, what kind of mushrooms were in that stew? Right.
Yeah.
Well, here's another twist as well, because this is right after they have the mushrooms with what's his face that they stole from his garden, and he's like, "Well, just come on in and eat the mushrooms." It's like, was it just regular mushrooms, or was it not regular mushrooms?
Yeah.
And maybe the whole book is about the trip they took on those mushrooms.
Hey, that's entirely possible. Probably not, given
Probably
the
not.
body of work around the series that Tolkien has created. But I do think it does a good job of showing that that world is bigger than this story, and that world is bigger than the people that currently live and are participating in this story. Right. One of the
Mm-hmm.
tropes in fantasy, for people writing, is that you tend to, you create a map. And I do this when I'm, building D&D stuff too, right? Like you create a map and it's an empty map, and then you start putting places on it, and you start thinking about tropes and sort of one-dimensional cultures and races. And, these are the people that are like the Mongols, and these are the people that are like the Vikings, and these are the people that are blah, blah, blah. Then over here, we've got orcs. And if you look at Middle Earth, the part of it that's sort of central to Frodo's story, it could be boiled down to a lot of those. Like especially if you watch the movies, right? Like if all you know is the movies, it could be boiled down to a lot of the tropes. Here's the humans, and they're morally complex, and here's the good-natured little people, and here's the elves, and they're mystical and powerful, and here's the orcs, and they're bad. Why? Because they're orcs. And having something like Tom Bombadil in there that just forces you to say, okay, what the fuck? This world has a weird and strange history that I know nothing about, creates maybe the illusion of depth.
It actually, in the books, it definitely creates depths. In the movies, I think it would just create confusion,
Yes.
especially for the average viewer, right? And that's kind of the thing. I do find it interesting though that like Tolkien was kind of the person who created our modern idea of what elves and orcs and dwarves and halflings or hobbits are, right?
Yes.
Because all of those things are drawn from like Germanic and Scandinavian lore, but his take on them is very, very different, right? I think that there's gnomes in that world as well, if I remember from the Silmarillion, but I can't quite recall. There's too many different bits of fantasy world building that are stuck in my brain from series that I've read. But like up until that point, like elves were like what
Little.
we think of
Yeah.
as like Tinkerbell. Yeah, like
Yeah.
that's an
Like
elf.
Fae. Yeah.
Yeah, and dwarves were people who lived underground and did mining and were covered in coal all the time. And orcs were not really a thing. Like he built a bunch of different things into orcs and goblins. Goblins honestly made probably the closest direct transition from old legends to Tolkien's works. They're just little green men who happen to live in the woods and are bad for you. They'll steal your children. Hey.
You mentioned something that I think is worth exploring. The idea that modern writers write differently, like they're writing for movies. Do you think that that's just sort of the way people are taught to write now? Or do you think it's more because modern writers are almost never just authors of books, right? Like they're screenwriters for TV shows and they getting into the industry now. Like it's very rare that you just, graduate high school, go to a college, write a book, bam, you're self-sustaining, right? Like you're doing all sorts of other shit, and that media landscape is sort of the one revenue generating sort of output for creativity that you can kind of count on getting jobs in, starting working your way up the ladder. And does that shape how you then approach writing books?
I think, okay, so all right, so yes. Let me expand a little. I think that there is no one simple answer. There usually isn't. In this case, I think it's like if you think about like when Tolkien was writing, radio was reasonably new, right, as a broadcast medium. So as I'm thinking this through, having asked the question, I'm sort of expanding on the idea in my mind. So audio has become kind of the medium by which they communicate or make art. So a lot of the stuff that he wrote was about music and sounds and songs and poetry, right? Things that you would listen to and hear. And if you've ever listened to an audiobook of Lord of the Rings, feel sorry for the people who have to read out the songs that Tolkien wrote because they read pretty good. They are not music. But then I got to thinking, okay, because it very much seems like modern authors are describing things in a very visual way. Like if you read a modern book, you don't often get a lot of this is what they heard, or this is what they smelled, or this is what they felt. You get some of that, but you get a lot of this is what they saw. And some of that is because human beings are very vision centric, right? Like most of the like something like 85% of our brain is dedicated to interpreting what our eyes see. So I think that some of it is that modern authors grew up watching TV and movies, right? So they're very much focused on what does this look like, right? And I want to describe a thing that would look cool. Whereas previously it was like, I have a story to tell and I want to write down the words that give you the idea of the story, right? You can figure out what it looks like. You've seen people, you know what people look like. I don't need to tell you that he has 2 eyes and 2 ears and a nose. You've seen a horse; they're everywhere. You don't have to describe. And now it's like this is what the horse did, and he, leapt through the thing with all of the stuff and flying through the air and left hand, right hand. This is what the rings looked like. It's just because we think more about visual stuff now, I think. But I do think that there is also an impact of, anyone who's writing now is probably also, as you say, writing for, TV, movies, and that kind of stuff. So they're thinking about like, what would this look like? Because that is the primary thing you're trying to get across.
Mm-hmm.
So long answer, short answer, yes.
All right. Anything else related to Tom Bombadil before we move on?
I don't think so. I would like to, speaking of songs that Tolkien wrote into the books, many of them are, I mean, I love the man. I love his work. I love everything that came out of his work and all the influence he's had on fantasy. But my God, some of his songs and poetry were bad. But the stuff that he wrote for Tom Bombadil was lighthearted and airy and actually reads like you could set it to music. And I would love to hear somebody who has done that. And I'm sure someone has. I would love to hear it.
I think the next idea that we should have and say we're going to do and then never execute on should be a sort of a blended, think Mr. Rogers, Mr. Dress Up style children's television show, loosely based on Tom Bombadil.
Oh my God, that could so work. I mean, you have to throw the Teletubbies in there because I think they fit in his little world perfectly.
Probably. You can throw anything in.
It was true. I wonder if we can get the rights to. Oh, do you remember the shape shifting cartoon for it was from when I was a kid and it was in reruns then, so you may not have seen it. What is it? Snickety Snick Barbatrick, and it was just this family of blobs, and they would be presented. They were shorts that went in between cartoons on Saturday morning, and they were just these blobs in various colors, and they would be presented with a problem, and like one of them would. They didn't say anything except something Barbatrick. They were called the Barba Papas, and they would be presented with a problem, and they would shapeshift into something to solve the problem. Like one would shapeshift into a dining room chair, and the other one would be like a table, and then the third one would sit down and eat dinner, sitting on one of them and eating off of the other one, or something silly like that.
I've never, ever even heard of that.
Oh, I'm going to have to send you a link. I will make a note. It was very much like a fever dream. Note to self, send Shane link to Barba Papa. I'm pretty sure it was actually a French cartoon as well.
So you have a big blob of notes here that actually look kind of serious.
Okay. Yeah, if we want to get into that, I will do it.
I mean, we're just going to talk about video games and shit for the rest of the episode, so we might as well have some meat in the sandwich.
All right, let's do something serious. So I was watching that famous podcast that I'm not going to call out by name because they would probably sue us into the dirt. But they were talking about the virtues of some Silicon Valley billionaire. And the thing was that his remote workers were using mouse wigglers in order to appear online. Right. And he was so smart. He took the weekend and he developed some code and he caught these people doing mouse wiggling and he fired them. Right. And the sort of hero of this story is the billionaire who caught his remote workers wiggling their mice in order to. Right. And my takeaway from that once upon a time would have been like, oh, hey, here's this really smart guy who wrote some code and he caught some people doing some stuff they're not supposed to do. But then I get to thinking about it, right? Like, 'cause I've been working now for like 30 years and I've had good bosses and I've had bad bosses, far more bad bosses than I've had good bosses. And the good bosses have all gone, here's the work I want you to do. Here's when I want it by. Go away and don't talk to me unless you need help until you're done. Right. And if you deliver the work on time, they didn't give a shit. Did you work on it for an hour and deliver it 3 weeks later? I don't care. That's when I needed it. That's the work I needed you to do. And you did it. Done. Mm-hmm. And the bad bosses were all, your butt must be in the seat at 8 a.m. and it must stay there until 4 p.m. And what productivity you do, I don't really care as long as your butt is in the seat and I can see you. Right. And those two things kind of like this caught me out like that. It's like if you're measuring somebody by how often their mouse is active, you're tracking the wrong stuff. And are you tracking those same things when those people are in the office? Right? Like my job is making drawings of things, right? But there's lots of times where I look at something and then I've got to stare at the ceiling for like 15 minutes just juggling things in my head. My mouse isn't moving. Like my computer goes to sleep. Does that mean I'm not working? No, I'm doing work. I'm just not moving my mouse. So my point here is kind of like, if you can't tell if someone is working or not without attaching some kind of digital ankle bracelet to them and, keeping track of them every moment of every day, then you're just bad at managing people.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few things that immediately pop into my head. There's been such a, and I hate to use the term sort of culture war, because like that's a bigger thing in our society right now, but like
Yeah.
a small version of it that exists within sort of the old school and new school mentalities about things like remote work versus being in the office and productivity, and how much of this conversation was grandstanding for the sake of justifying controlling employees, forcing return to office work, things like that. Like, how big of a problem was this versus sensationalizing something that probably happened a little bit for the sake of justifying your position on whatever it is. It's important because it's Silicon Valley. It's a different world, like not Silicon Valley itself, but the type of work that happens there a lot. You contrast it to working assembly line at Ford or General Motors in the 1930s or something like that, right? Where your manager knew what you did because they did it. Your manager's manager worked their way up from being on the line too. They understood the job that you were doing, sort of the things that it took. In a lot of the world now, certainly in Silicon Valley, but in a lot of office related sort of businesses and industries that have that bureaucratic layer that sits on top of productivity, but isn't really a part of the productivity. They don't know how the productivity works. It's the black box, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you say that you need to sit at your desk and stare at the ceiling and your computer goes on standby, I understand that.
Yep.
Right?
So is my boss, thankfully.
Thankfully. But, that person that's, got a BA or whatever that's never done that type of work, that doesn't understand problem solving the way, I don't want to say they don't understand problem solving, but the process of problem solving within the scope of whatever that job is, they don't get it. They don't know how it works. They can't evaluate that. So they need to evaluate something to justify their own existence.
Yes, and that is kind of, you've very succinctly boiled down the point that I was trying to make, is that, like, we're trying to measure something. And the more that I think of it, the more I think that A, we're measuring the wrong things, and B, measuring is just stupid,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we're measuring, like, we spend so much time measuring what is your worth to the organization, right? It's how you figure out, like, who's getting raises this year, right? And it always comes back, especially from people who are in a position where I have to decide who gets what raise. Like, I get it. That's a hard job, right? That's why managers get paid money, is because it is really, really hard, if you're a human being with any kind of empathy, to judge people against one another. Who gets a raise, who doesn't, who gets more, who gets less. And the more I think about it, the more I think, you know what? Like, it's impossible to measure anymore, because so many of the people in our society who have so much don't really do more, right? They've just found the right levers to pull, and they have so much more leverage that it just, eh. So I almost think, like, it comes specifically because we're in the middle of negotiations with my union at work. And we have a structure that is just bonkers, where it doesn't really matter how good you are at your job. What matters is like, what work did you get assigned this year?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And all of the managers that I've dealt with do a pretty good job of trying to balance off, like, all right, like, everybody's got to sort of take turns, right? Because that's the way it works. Because there's only a limited budget. You got to figure out. And I've often thought, like, the only thing that those kind of performance ratings matter for are promotions. And it makes so much more sense to me to decouple those and go, everybody gets the same raise every year. The only reason we evaluate your performance is to figure out, do you jump up to the next level,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're going to go from a level 1 introductory tech to a level 2 intermediate tech, right? Do you have the skills and ability to do that? And, like, that's the only thing that really needs to be judged on a skill basis. Otherwise, you know what? We're taking the same amount of your life away for you to do productive things for the company, right? Like, why is 1 hour of your time worth so much more than 1 hour of my time? It's an hour. Everybody has the same hour. You know, I have to spend more of my day cooking and cleaning this week than other weeks. So I don't know what my point was there. I just wanted to throw that in there.
So one of the industries that I follow, and I don't know why I follow it so much anymore because I don't participate in it as much as I used to, but is like video game development.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the pandemic hurt too, but you know, the economy's not been great, but that industry has gone to shit. And it isn't gone to shit because the people that make games are choosing to make bad games. It's gone to shit because of how big and bloated and how abstracted decision makers and people that set goals are from even the knowledge to understand what's required to do whatever it is they're asking or wanting to do. And, you know, in recent years, that's led to things like massive crunch. For those of you that don't know what crunch is, it's prevalent in a lot of like development, but really, really bad in the video game development world where you set an arbitrary deadline for something to be done, right? Like, you know, we gotta look good this quarter for our shareholders. This game has definitely got to come out by this date. And I mean, it just doesn't make sense from a technical perspective based on either shipping a product that sort of meets expectations, but, you know, just the man hours required to do it, or you doing good work to do it. But you get people that are putting in 80, 100-hour weeks, shit like that, all hands on deck, breaking labor laws in a lot of areas to ship a half-baked or broken product by an arbitrary date to appease shareholders. And worse now, these big groups, be it publishers, be it developers, studios, they then also, because development timelines are so long now for big games, there's a expansion and contraction that also happens within the industry where it's like, you're going to crunch to get this game out, and then we're going to lay you off. Thanks. You know, 100, 200, 300, 1,500 people all lose their jobs because the game is done. Maybe it was a hit. That doesn't seem to matter too much, you know? We don't need you for the next 5 years or whatever because we already got another team working on what's going to be our next big thing, but it's not going to be done for 3 years. So good luck out there, eh?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, the layoffs make the balance sheet look good because you don't have the salaries to pay out anymore and your stock price goes up.
You know, and part of that is just capitalism the way it's always worked. But I think a bigger part of that now is the abstraction and the number of layers of abstraction that fall between the people in charge and the people that produce. The knowledge gap between them, the difference in priorities, the difference in passions, the wealth gap, absolutely. I mean, that's always existed to a certain extent, you know, but it's definitely worse now. And that, as everything becomes more technical, everything is nerd stuff now. Cars, blenders, toasters, manufacturing of almost any kind, introduction of robotics, introduction of AI, blah, 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 blah. Like, there just isn't a lot of, unless you're like in trades now, a lot of
even there
big workforce jobs that aren't suffering from the same sort of inshitification in employment practices as they are in the inshitification of the products they're making. The video games industry is ready to collapse. It's at the point where it's ready to fold in on itself. Sony just spent $1 bajillion and years and years and years making a game that was sort of a trend chaser, right? Ooh, Overwatch is good. Blizzard released that 700 years ago now. Let's make one of those. And they put it out, Concord.
I've never heard of it.
By all accounts, it wasn't even a bad game. It was pretty polished. It lacked anything unique or special that sort of made it stand out amongst all the competition there is in that space now, because not only were they chasing a trend and then releasing a product 7 years after that trend was really starting to be popular. But people have innovated, since they sort of established the original roadmap for what they've done, and the product that they put out maybe felt a little bit dated, lacked some of whatever it was, the zhizh, the stuff that made it special. And not only did it bomb, like critically it did okay, nobody played the game. Almost nobody bought it. The only thing that I can think of that would have been a similar story is back when the MMO Final Fantasy XIV first came out. I don't know if you ever got into that.
No, I've heard about it.
It was bad. It just people bounced off of it. And Square Enix at the time said, okay, you know what? We're going to refund you all. We're going to put this back in the oven. We're not going to just turn a couple of knobs. We're going to rethink it from the ground up, release a new product. And it's probably the only serious competition World of Warcraft has had in the last, I don't know, was it 15 years
It's
now?
huge.
Yeah.
I know it's
absolutely
huge.
huge.
I know a lot of people who play it.
But Concord, Sony decided, okay, we're going to stop sales of it right now, and we're going to decide what we're going to do. And what they decided to do was refund the few people that bought it, take their servers offline, and the product is gone forever. Like, it was probably, I don't know what the total budget in terms of like development costs and marketing and all of that shit was, but it's probably like capital B billions. At least high triple digit millions. Like, you don't make a AAA game for less than 300 million now. And that work is gone. Like the trend in the movie industry now, it's a tax write-off. The product will not be seen ever.
You have to, in order for it to be a tax write-off, you have to release it at least somewhere. Quite often it will be on the B screen of one theater.
Well, it came out. It did come out for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
To give it some context, the number of concurrent players on Steam, now it also released on PlayStation, but it wasn't much better there. It was something like 700 during times when 10, 15-year-old games would have 100,000 people playing them.
Like, there's more people playing Diablo 1 at any given time than that.
Yeah. That's just sort of what happened. And like, that's setting $1 billion on fire. And
it sure is.
Let's not even talk about the hit to your reputation and everything else that comes with it.
Well, everybody already hated Sony anyway.
I'm sure those developers have pretty good job security right now, right? Right? Oh, have you let them all go yet? Most of them? Like,
yeah, oh yeah, all of them, unless they have another project in the oven they can work on.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them are on short-term contracts too, which really sucks. Anyway, all of this talk of video games leads us really nicely into our next topic.
I used to be an adventurer like you.
Stay a while and listen.
I have been playing the early access of Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, which is, Brad, what's his face from EverQuest. This is really sad. My brain does not kick up names very well. But it was sort of his brainchild. It was a Kickstarter, and it's been in development now for 15 years.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though, but he's no longer involved in it, right?
Well, he's dead.
Okay.
He died. He had a heart attack like 5 years ago or something like that.
I think the guy that was the composer, Chris Perkins, not the D&D one, but I think he became like the creative director for the whole game, if I read that right.
Yes, he has. There's like 3 or 4 people. Now, the devs are actually pretty communicative, and I'm enjoying the game. It is very much, it is not a AAA game. It is a throwback to an older style of game. It feels a lot like EverQuest. There's a few quality of life things that have been thrown in. There's a little bit of sort of WoW vibes without the cartoony or the hand holding. It very much like when you log in, it's like, here you are. Good luck. I spent probably a good 8 hours when I first logged in, just trying to figure out how do I get out of my starting area, which for a lot of people is very frustrating.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit because it doesn't have like a proper map intentionally.
It never will. It will eventually have a map, but it's never going to have a here's where you are and here's where you're heading type of map. Yeah. It will have a here's the general area where you are and here's what it looks like type of map, which some people enjoy and some people don't. honestly, the map thing is something that people argue about in general chat all day long. There's a very, very vocal but minority of people who don't want any kind of map at all. Just get good, scrub. Sort of the moderate opinion is we don't need you to tell us exactly where we are, exactly where we're going. We just need a map that shows what this area looks like, so I can go, there's a landmark, there's a landmark, there's a landmark. I need to head north, right? Because there is a compass. We do have a compass, and they have said that there's going to be a map of some kind. They haven't quite decided what that is yet. And there are some areas that are definitely very unpolished. There's invisible walls all over the place. There's a couple of places in the world where you can run off the edge of the world and look back through all of the skins and whatnot. I am having a good time. I'm in a guild. I'm playing with some friends. It's great, but it's very much in contrast to the idea of it has to release at a certain time, right? Like I think there's 3 or 4 main developers on this game, and they're doing it like they have day jobs. This is not their job. This is a passion project for them. Right. And you can very much tell because like stuff, like there's so much synergy between stuff. I've gotten into some groups. And my original idea of the game is it's the kind of thing that you can watch TV, like his EverQuest, right? You could sort of have a movie going in the background. You got to click a few buttons from time to time. And if you miss something by 10 seconds, it's not a big deal. This is not like that. And there's a lot of stuff that like as an individual you can do and sort of as a pair of people you can do. And there's a lot of stuff that it becomes a cross-class synergy combo type thing, right? Like I do a thing that creates an effect on the mob that makes your ability work better, that kind of stuff. They've also done a thing where there's solo mobs and there's group mobs, right? Think about like as if one thing were a regular open world trash mob and something else is sort of like a named mob. But then there's like other levels above that. It's neat, but it's very interesting to watch the people who pop in. Like a lot of people bought the game at Christmas, right? And there's this massive influx of people. And the world now feels overfilled, right? Because it's not very big yet. So everybody's sort of crowded in. And the number of people who come in and say, well, this sucks because it's not like WoW. And I have to think like, what? Well, I mean, if you want a game that's exactly like WoW, there's a game that's exactly like WoW.
Yeah, I mean, first you have to ask, what WoW are you talking about? Because the game's been around for 20 plus years now, and it's not the game that it used to be either. Yeah.
No, it's not. But I mean, like, there's lots of stuff that WoW does. It's like it's very much focused at a range of people. From I'm going to log in for an hour and do something all by myself, and you can do that. To I want to get involved with 20 other people and go and kill a giant dragon, and you can do that. Right? This is very much focused on you can do stuff by yourself, but it's going to be slow and tedious. Or you can do stuff in a group, and it will be kind of fun. And the more groupy stuff you do, the more complicated it gets. But then the people, and it's not even so much that it's frustrating, it's confusing to me that people jump into a thing that is very much advertised as this is inspired by EverQuest. It's going to be like EverQuest, who jump into the thing and immediately start saying how everything sucks and this is how they should do it. Like there are games that do what you want it to do. I got into a little bit of an altercation with somebody, and it was eye-opening to me, and it made me sort of think back to a lot of other interactions that I've had with people on the internet, right? Where somebody was saying, blah, 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 this, that, the other thing, this is how it should be, this is how it should be. And I'm like it sounds, and my response was, it sounds to me like you're not having fun. Like you should go play a game that you find fun. It immediately became, and this is, I made a note on here. So somebody made basically an outrageous statement, and I more or less said, well, I think that you are incorrect, and here's why. And it sounds like you're not having fun. So, like, why not go do something you find fun? And I was immediately accused of making the original statement by the person who made the original statement. And I was so confused by that. I'm like, I don't even know how to respond to this. Right. And it very much was an internet trolley kind of thing. Right. I spotted that. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm done interacting with you. There's no ignore feature yet. right? But of course, it's massively crowded and everybody's just sort of dogpiling on, going, I got to get in on the joke. And it was a bit hurtful, right? I mean, I have feelings and they got hurt. And I got to thinking, like, why do people behave like that? Like, what is the point?
I think we probably need to give it some extra context too. This is a game where the people that are creating it have a vision.
They do.
Right? Like the EverQuest of old. And I would argue, like I say, WoW's changed over the times. And there's people that prefer how WoW used to be. And even their classic servers don't quite achieve that. But one of the things that the people that are pining for a game like this are pining for is being in a game where your reputation mattered, because that was supposed to filter out a lot of the bullshit that came with all of that other stuff, right? Your reputation mattered. In a game like EverQuest, you would be ostracized by your group. And in a game where you have to be part of a group to experience so much of it, I mean, people were always dicks, but,
yes,
there was consequences for being too much of a dick.
There's a certain amount of dickishness that is just amusing, right?
Yeah.
Like there was immediately after this thing happened, I accidentally engaged a group mob solo, right? There's no way I can win. I'm going to die. So I ran. And there was a comment after that, hey, it's amusing to watch this person being beaten up by or getting his ass kicked by such and such. And my response that I put out into general chat was, like, it's amusing to watch anyone get their ass kicked, right? But it was just like the I don't know, the people who come out of the woodwork just sort of amuse me. And they seem to be attracted to games like this. It's like they come to games that are difficult and then complain about how difficult they are. And then they're assholes about complaining about how difficult it is.
I think that's part of it. I think even just the way that buying games and finding games works right now, there's this sort of, especially with a game where, like, here is one that's created with a vision. This is meant to serve a very niche audience. And if it's not for you, it's not for you. But the combination of people just trying shit because other people are trying it. Maybe one of your influencer streamers was playing it or something like that. And you're like, I'm going to play this game. And then B, you spent money on it.
Yeah. Co-Carnage is a big advocate of this game. I think he's invested a fair amount of his own money in it. So
yeah,
he's invested in seeing it succeed.
So I wouldn't be surprised if, like, there's a certain number of people out there that they aren't even a fan of this game in particular, but they're a fan of a person who was a fan of this game. And
it's possible.
Parts of their community where there's overlap are going to try this game, but they're finding out the game isn't for them. But they're doubly invested because they've got part of their perceived community, their tribe, that is into it. And they've also spent money on it now. So it's like, it's hard to get past the idea, I find a lot of people right now, that everything has to be for everyone. And that's just not the case.
It's not. No, but that's part of, like, it gets marketed to people that way, right? Like, you have to be part of this or you're square.
Yeah. What I'm interested in, like, in following this game, I'm not going to say I don't think it's for me. I know it's not for me.
It's not for you. No.
What I'm interested in, though, is seeing if a game like this can exist in a vacuum. So, like, take the idea of not having a map, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the early days of EverQuest, I mean, you'd have your online communities and forums and stuff like that, and you'd see, blah, 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 blah. Any game that didn't have a map, people are going to share information, and eventually there was going to be sort of an online version of it or something like that. But nowadays, with the amount of people that are doing it, technology's evolved. Like, there will be an interactive map that will show everything you want to know online for this game. There probably already is, right?
It exists.
So what's interesting to me is, can the game, with its vision of not having that stuff, exist when a percentage of the player base is going to turn to those tools anyway? And do they, having that sort of ready access to information, the stuff that the video game was trying to withhold, impact the gameplay experience of the people that are trying to not have the mystery spoiled or trying to, enjoy the game for the vision that it originally was? And I don't know what the answer to that is. I'm interested to see how that plays out.
I think it's going to have the same. It's going to. I've been thinking about this a little bit, and it works out that it's kind of like an economy, right? There are people who have information, and they are zooming ahead, and they're level 25 or 30 now. And there are people who don't have the information. Like these, a lot of these people, like our guild leader, for example, has been involved since day one. Like he backed the Kickstarter, I think, before there was even a game. Like he's like, we're not testing. Like we're putting out the Kickstarter in the hopes that someday we're going to have a game. So he's into it for like 20 plus years, or 15 or whatever it is. It's a long time. So he's been on like a lot of the betas, right? Where it's like stuff worked different, but the landscape was largely the same. So he knows where stuff is. He knows how to get places. And this is an interesting thing that I'm finding out. Not having a map, and I do have a map. Like I have a sort of generic map up on the other screen that says this is where stuff is. It's not complete. It's not accurate, but it's helpful to go. All right, like this is where I want to go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually learning to look at landmarks in the world and go, where am I? Right. And that's interesting. And that's the kind of map that they're already planning to provide. Like it's in the roadmap. Like we're going to make a map. We just don't have it yet.
There's map and then there's map, right? Like there's the kind of map that's
Yes.
on page 1 and 2 of every fantasy novel. It shows the world and here's the landmass with the names on it to give you a general sense of geography. But then there's the map. Like the one thing that I watched a video of a guy that probably this game wasn't for, because he played it for a little while, was not very positive about the game. And the one thing, like it was a very early quest, you're probably familiar with it, where the quest was basically that he had to go find a certain kind of tree and get wood from it or something like that. But those trees weren't in the area that he was, and there was nothing, of course, to indicate where it was.
Yes.
And that's an interesting sort of thing in the vacuum. Where that becomes an issue is if you're trying to enjoy it that way and sort of immerse yourself in the world, and if you happen across the type of tree where you're like, oh, there's that thing that I need some stuff for, you're going to be competing for those resources with people that I want point A, point B, I want that quest marker that's the arrow pointing me to where I need to go. And that could impact your ability to do what you want to do. I look at my experience with World of Warcraft. The game has changed so much over the years, and it's changed primarily for, well, I won't say primarily, but there's two key things that have gone on. They've either made changes to get around issues where people with add-ons and stuff like that have taken content and trivialized it. Stuff like quest helpers and like raid helper stuff, like boss mods, things like that, that trivialize the content in a certain way. It's not just making the information available, but making it convenient, right? Like there's a difference between you have somebody in your guild who knows where something is and he shares his knowledge with the rest of his guild. That's a social thing. That's part of why people that, want these type of games, because you create that sense of community and that sort of social exercise that doesn't need to happen when you've got a quest marker that's, oh, there's a thing with a question mark over its head over there, and there's an arrow pointing to him, and blah, blah, blah.
It's crazy taxi.
Yeah. So I'm interested to see how well it holds up, because World of Warcraft, they did one of two things. They either changed the vision to get around people trivializing the content, or they just took what people were doing to trivialize the content and folded that into the game as a quality of life feature anyway, which significantly changed what the game was as well.
I think that any game that wants to be successful is going to have to fold in those quality of life things over time. Because a lot of, especially things like this that are niche games, I'm going to open my second beer. I have a Chalky Walkie chocolate milkshake stout, which I think you had last time.
And I was disappointed in it. It wasn't bad. It just wasn't chalky to me.
No, it's pretty much just a stout.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I like stout, so it's fine for me. I think over the evolution of a game like this, especially one that's very niche, you end up with a couple of things. Like I said, it's kind of like an economy. And when we think about the levels that people have, right? If you log into, for example, EverQuest now, there's nobody at level 1 to like 70 for you to play with, right? So either you have to go, all right, I either need to make friends who are going to power level me past all of this stuff and I'm going to have no knowledge of any of it, or you have to make it easier for people to catch up at that point. And some of how you do that is you change the difficulty curve. Some of it is you add quality of life stuff, so that you can do those things faster,
Yeah.
right? Because if it takes somebody a year to go from level 1 to 100, right, and it's been 10 years, right, and it took 10 years for them to get there, people who start now, if they take 10 years, they're always going to be 10 years behind, and the game is just going to die.
I think there's another way to sort of approach that. And this comes from my experience in the World of Warcraft private server community, where,
Mm-hmm.
and it needs to be done right. You get so much call for basically fresh realms. Fresh becomes kind of a meme, especially in the
Mm-hmm.
vanilla WoW private servers, where, everybody's leveled up, and it's just exactly that. And it wasn't so much that there wasn't anything that people that, are level 1 could do. The experience of getting from level 1 to whatever your level cap has to be long enough that that journey is worth reliving, right? Like, it can't be, we're going to reset the server and you're going to have a 1 week sort of inconvenient time until you get right back to where you were, right?
Yeah.
And then when you get to your level cap, there has to be a progression and enough things to do. Like, you experience this with your progression servers too, right? Like, I know you've done a lot of EverQuest progression stuff. Have you gone through anything that is really like, this is the expansion that we're playing, we're going to play this for like a year and a half or 2 years, and then we're going to reset and do it again?
Not exactly. No, there was one server that did that, and it died pretty quick.
Yeah.
There's sort of two things about these kind of MMO games that I find myself enjoying, and I think that I'm sort of in the majority this way, is that like the original sort of fresh idea of we're going to start and sort of level up together. And some people will be faster and some people will be slower. And there's also that sort of just get to max level and do the interesting things at max level. So you're right. Like the idea of sort of, resetting, and there's a reason that there's a yearly release of EverQuest TLPs. Like they tend to stay in an expansion for like 30 to 90 days, right? Because it's so well mapped out now, like people burn through that content real quick. And then like the next year, everybody will, like a large number of people will sort of hop to the next one and go, all right, we're going to do it again. And there's a certain amount of, and I know that you enjoy the sort of meta of World of Warcraft. You've talked about that a few times. So there's an interesting thing for me to go, can I do it more efficiently this time? Like, what can I do this time to make it just a little bit faster, just a little bit better? And that sort of metagame for me is interesting. I mean, I kind of agree that it has to have enough time to continue on. But at the same time, like the original appeal of MMOs to me was the idea that this is a thing that you just continually develop.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the idea of going like, and there was an awful lot of burnout from because there's a few guilds that do the EQ TLP thing where they'll like literally start fresh on everyone. And some of that has to do with real money trading, which doesn't happen because that's not a thing, but there's a few things that people are willing to pay money for. So there are a few cartels that will form up to monopolize that particular resource and sell it for real money. Because why not? I mean, if you're going to do video games for a living, that's a way to do it. So there's a certain portion of that, but I like the idea that like there's always something new around the corner. Like EverQuest was great like that for me because the world was so huge.
But looking at Pantheon, like, I guess part of it depends on what they define as success for their game. Because if they have a vision, they want to be this niche game that appeals to a niche audience, and they're doing it with a small team, that's clearly, to me, not a game that is going to get every couple of years, here's an expansion that provides a significant amount of new content. Because it's taken, 10 years to get to where they are now, and it's still early access, yada, yada, yada. So to me, like a game like that might be better to follow the model of maybe not resetting the world, but recognizing there's a significant percentage of our population that is gonna leave. They've seen it all. It's not really easy to just go back and do the stuff from the beginning because, if you've hypothetically, you got an alt character that has a bajillion D gold or whatever. Like, you're not going to play an alt character in a vacuum when all you got to do is make your life easier
Drink 'em.
or whatever, right? Yeah. So maybe following that common sort of fresh model that existed with the vanilla WoW private servers, and that like after 3 years or something, they open up new realms beside that a significant percentage of the population just sort of migrates to. I don't think you can shut the old realms down, because part of the appeal of an MMO is that it's a sort of a persistent thing as well, right? I've got 700 hours invested into this character and you deleted them? Fuck that.
That's one of the things about early access that I think people are going to be a little bit shocked about, because they've been very clear that like we're going to try and avoid wiping servers, but if we have to, we will. And before we get to actual release, we are definitely wiping.
Yes.
Yeah. So like I guarantee you that the characters I've got right now will be wiped when this thing gets released for real. And I mean, that's fine. I get that, but I'm sure there's a lot of people who have read nothing. They've looked at, because it's released on Steam now. There's a lot of people who have purchased it on Steam and gone, what is this? Right? They're going to be shocked, because this is, and there's, oh my God, people are having arguments about this is an early release. It's actually alpha. No, it's actually beta. No, it's actually early release. Here's the difference between alpha and beta and early release. Like it's an amalgam of all three of them. It depends on what you want to call it, right? It is very definitely not even a release candidate. It's pretty polished for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But there's not enough mobs in the starting areas. There's not enough starting areas. Some of the quests don't work. Some of the quest people don't talk to you. The trade skills are very much just a basic sketch of what they're going to be, right? It's like these recipes don't work. These spells. I'll give you an example of things that are on the bug list, but are not game breaking, but god damn, they're inconvenient. I'm playing a shaman, and our major thing is heal over time spells.
Mm-hmm.
But in the last patch, what shamans were doing was they were stacking multiple levels of the same thing, like de-ranking them, but they stacked. So they would, like, a level 20 shaman would have, I think, 4 or 5 different levels of the heal over time.
Like 6 hots rolling. And
yes. So they would literally run them all. So in order to fix that, and this is an interesting thing that they've done with a bunch of spells, is that you don't actually get new spells. You get an evolution of the spell you've already got, which makes sense. Like a direct damage poison spell is a direct damage poison spell. It doesn't matter what you call it. So what they did was they said, all right, you get one hot spell, and every time that you upgrade it, it upgrades. I got my upgrade at level 16. I was level 16 and a tiny sliver of experience. I upgraded my spell. Hey, this is a cool new spell. I died. I de-leveled. My hot doesn't work anymore, because it's a level 16 spell and I'm level 15. So it's on the bug list, and I can get around it because I still have, like, I have another hot that is group based, right? And it's cheap enough that I just use that. And I have one that's channeled. So like I hit it, but I can't do anything else while it's running.
mm-hmm.
So I can function. And my role in that on that character is not really as a group healer anyway. It's like buffer, debuffer, backup healer, that kind of stuff. So it's functional, but it's definitely interesting to look at this and go like, oh yeah, there's some bugs in here for sure. And because like this is something that most of the developers are doing in their spare time, like, will it be fixed this week? Probably not. Next week? Maybe.
And I wouldn't be surprised, they undo some of the decisions that they've made too around that, and they'll give you the downranked spells, but they'll come up with a priority system for how they work when they're, their hots or their overtime spells. That's what WoW went through in the early days, vanilla, Burning Crusade. Like having the different ranks of spells was kind of part of the meta that made some classes really interesting. But they definitely had to solve that problem where it's like, if you cast a damage or heal over time spell and then you apply a higher level one to that target,
it overwrites.
It has to overwrite. And if you don't, then it has to refresh or whatever, like you have to figure out what your rules for that are. Because obviously it's going to be not exploited, but taken advantage of in a way it'll
be unintentional. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think like there's a simple solution to it, which is you can have like whichever rank you want, but you can only have one of them on your bar. Because one of the things about this game that I actually really like is that there is a limited set of actions that you can have.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I wouldn't like this game.
No, you can have 4 techniques and 6 utility spells, and then you have a bar of, I think it's 8 abilities that you can have. And there's going to be some shifting around about that because right now, for example, if you cast a buff on someone and you take that buff off your bar, that buff is removed from everyone you applied it to. Right. So, for example, I have a pet, right? I have to like unmemorize something in order to resurrect people because it's a different spell and it goes into one of those slots. I unmemorize my pet and he disappears, and now I can res people, and then I got to resummon my pet. There's lots of stuff that's not working. I mean, like I would suggest honestly that when it gets closer to release, you might want to try it.
Yeah. And it's early access. That's what early access is for. Like, you haven't even got systems finalized yet. Like you're testing systems and balance, and then you're going to build a story and a game around it, right? Like
a lot of the lore I think exists. Like they've written a whole bunch of sort of backstory and lore. And then they're fitting the game around it. I think they started with lore, and it's one of the reasons it's been so long in development is that they were working on that. And it's obvious that like the programming is really, really difficult, and it's not optimized either. Like my system runs it at 40 frames per second.
Yeah. Hey, at least it's not built on Tank Simulator.
It's not built on Tank Simulator. This is funny. It has, when you do a location, it has 4 things. They're in the wackiest order you can imagine. It goes X, Z, heading, speed, Y. Yeah, it's like what even is this? Like, what direction is like? Which one of these is north and south? It's like, oh man. Anyway, I mean, I enjoy the game. I like it. I wouldn't at this point. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone unless you're really interested in seeing how these things develop.
Yeah,
because it is interesting for that. Like even watching from patch to patch, the things that change is interesting because they're not super fast, right? Like they're basically releasing a patch every time they've got something. So you might have 2 one week and then go a month without.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff they're changing, it's like, okay, so we're introducing a patch and now everything has changed. If you have this quest, you need to get rid of it and start again.
It kind of reminds me, and I might have to think about giving it a shot, like even in early access. Because I'm a masochist. I enjoyed the very early days of like private server WoW emulation. Like I started playing Burning Crusade, like shortly after Burning Crusade released, I was playing it on a private server instead of live. And at that point, like it's not even close to what the game is supposed to be. So understanding what was working and what wasn't working and how to get around it was a part of the meta that I enjoyed. And also it was interesting to find like the loopholes and I mean, they're not exploits in the traditional sense that we think of exploits, but like I enjoy finding systems and then trying to figure out how to break them. And through that process, like they patch that stuff out and fix it and tweak it and turn the knobs eventually. And I kind of enjoyed that in my like, I don't know, 2006, 2007 era, kind of playing WoW on private servers. And I really haven't had that experience since then. I got a little bit of it playing Satisfactory while it was in like early access. Now that it's gone full release, it's pretty polished. So you don't have too many of those. Like, here's this trick that isn't supposed to work, but totally does, that you can kind of use to your advantage. So how many hours would you say you've got into this game since you've started playing it? Or let me rephrase the question, because I probably need to say how many days or weeks of playtime.
It's not weeks of playtime, but it's probably in the days of playtime.
Okay.
Most evenings I'll log on for an hour or two. There hasn't been since early access released. It was just before Christmas. Yeah, early access came out the week before we went away for Christmas. So it was 2 weeks before Christmas it came out. I played for 3 or 4 days before I went away for the Christmas week, and then I came back just after Christmas, and that's 3 weeks now. That's 2 weeks. So it's basically I've played it for almost 3 weeks, And in those 3 weeks, I'd say 4 hours a day times 21. So like 100 120, 130 hours.
Okay.
It's a significant amount. I'm at level 15 on my main, and my alt. I have a box, right? I have two, because our group had our summoner. There are two classes that can summon dead bodies: necromancers and summoners. And our summoner, unfortunately, is in a massively different time zone than the rest of us. So if we die somewhere, and corpse retrieval is a thing, corpse runs are a thing. It's really, really annoying sometimes. Like oh my God, I spent probably 6 hours trying to retrieve a corpse. I got jumped by a group mob under a tree in a corner, and trying to get close enough to drag that corpse out. I think I dropped 4 more corpses in there. So, I mean, I eventually found somebody to summon them, but it's really frustrating to not have that. So I'm leveling up a summoner to the level where they can summon our bodies. That's it. That's really all I want it for. Right? Oops, we died. It's fine. I'll log my summoner in, and we'll summon our bodies, and we'll keep going. He's now at level 11. I will say that boxing is really, really hard. Like really hard. Because there's even like my shaman, for example, I like in a group setting, even when I'm not the main when I'm the main healer, I'm basically hitting buttons as fast as I possibly can. Because I've got to slow the mob, I've got to debuff the mob, I have to make sure buffs stay up with my players, I have to heal people, I got a group heal, I have to do some amount of damage, and then I've got to restore my mana. Like it's just literally tick, 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 tick.
Mm-hmm.
It is not the kind of game that you can communicate via text very well.
Do you find playing, I guess healers is probably less prominent, but do you find natural rotations developing in this game?
No. Well, yes and no. They're very situational. One of the things that they've tried to do through development is avoid rotations as such.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's things that it's like when this is up, you hit it, and when that is running, then you do this. Right. So there's a series of sort of if-thens.
Like a priority.
But because kind of, yeah, it's much more of a priority type thing. But there's only like I say, there's only like there's 8 things that you might do that use mana and or have like timed casts, and then there's 4 things that are instant casts that you have cooldowns on. And you've got to think about, there's some really interesting mechanics they've come up with. Wizards, for example, have some kind of a mechanic where if you just mindlessly blast away, you will kill yourself. Like instead of using mana, you will start burning life. And it's not when you run out of mana, it's when you run out of a third resource. So you actually have to balance. It's almost like as you cast spells, you build up toxicity. And if you get to that level, then as you're casting spells, it starts using life instead of mana. Right? So wizards can do a whack load of damage really, really quickly. But if you try and sustain that, you will die.
I like that. I like that idea. I tried to do something similar when we were doing the making our own TTRPG systems, where I did a combined, basically like a health and mana type system where it was just stamina. Mm-hmm. And you expending spells were expending stamina, so you had to be strategic about kind of how you're doing it. I like creating those sort of decisions that you have to make so that you're not mindlessly just, what's the most powerful thing I can do right now? Push the button, you know?
Yeah, and that's the thing that makes boxing really difficult, is that you have to be making decisions, right? And if you're making decisions based on, because right now I have like the shaman and the summoner, and basically what I'm doing is using the summoner and healing with the shaman when it's appropriate. That's
so.
it.
What is the game developer's stance on multi-boxing right now? Is it you can do it as long as you're not automating, or is it you shouldn't do it at all, or what is it?
They're fine with it. I don't think they've made an official statement about like broadcasting keys. I will say that setting up a meta where you can just broadcast keys from one box to another is going to be damn near impossible, just because there's so much decision making based on, you know, like what's happening right now versus what key I'm going to push, versus which key did I last push and which one am I going to push next.
It depends, because like in instances in games like that, like there's a lot of benefit to stacking identical characters.
Yes.
You know?
And that I'm pretty sure that they will crack down on.
Okay.
I think a large part of it too is like do what you want as long as you're not impacting other people,
Mhm.
right? If it's hey, I've got 5 wizards and I'm owning all of the content and all of the new barriers, then
Yeah.
like you're going to get banned, right? The developers actually are watching stuff, so
PvP, yeah?
no,
No PvP?
no PvP.
Okay, I can understand why that might be more lenient for boxing then.
Yeah, well, and that's just it. And it's like PvP in EverQuest was always really terrible. Some people really loved it, and I know that people love PvP. And if you love PvP, cool, you do you. Go do it in a different game. This is not the game for that.
I guess the line that they'll have to walk is a lot of the stuff doesn't have group size limits in that game, right? Is that what I read?
No, that's not. We don't have raids yet.
Okay.
There's six people in a group, I think is what it is. So group size is 6.
Oh, okay. Okay. I thought I'd read, maybe it was on their roadmap. I thought like the outdoor sort of raids and stuff that weren't going to be instance, the intention was that it wasn't going to be group size limits.
For raids, there probably won't be, or it'll be something so huge you're likely never going to fill it.
No, that'll be probably where they start cracking down on multi-boxing though. Because then it affects the balance of that if you're stacking.
Yeah. They may or they may not. It depends on what kind of, because they haven't decided what kind of economic model they're going to do. Like right now, there isn't a monthly subscription, right? It's buy the game, play the game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure they're going back and forth between monthly subscription and sort of the cash store model. I kind of myself hope they come down on the monthly thing. And at that point, if you want to pay 72 subscriptions, have at her, bud. Right? Like that's 72 subscriptions in our bank account. I don't think that they're focused so much on making money. I think they want to more or less like we need to fund the development of this game is where they're at right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. Anyway, I mean, like it and EverQuest came down like that too. Like there was a guy who was fielding a 40-person team, and like everybody's like you can't allow this, and basically the company was like they're paying for it. Like if you want to pay for it, you can do it too.
Mm-hmm.
Every game in the end is pay to win.
Sure. So safe to say with the amount of time you've been throwing at this game, you probably haven't been playing much else?
I have not been playing much else. I did lean into Far Cry 4 a little bit. I got frustrated by the eagle and wolf attacks, and I'm like, this is just a silly mechanic, and I hate it. Otherwise, a great game.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not much else. Solitaire. I play a little solitaire.
Honestly, the only thing I think I remember about Far Cry 4 is that the at the beginning of the game, like when you kind of come in and you talk to the head honcho dude, he basically offers you the opportunity to just win the game, like beat the game right there. Just like, here you go, it's yours. Take over or whatever. I forget what the context of it is specifically. But it feels like it's a setup for something in the game. And of course, you're going to disagree and not do it. But if you agree to it, you win. Like the game's over, which I found interesting.
Yeah, it's like if you want to play, it's an interesting way to handle are you going to do a good playthrough or an evil playthrough?
Yeah.
Right. And if you have a meeting with the big bad, and if you go, okay, I'll ally with you, it's like, okay, great. The game's over. You don't have a struggle anymore. Yeah. He's already in control. Congratulations, you win.
Yeah. It was very much it's more of an Easter egg because it's like, okay, once you do this, you're going to go back to an old save and not do it so that you can actually play the game. But I found it interesting just to have it there.
It is neat. Yeah. I enjoy the premise of the Far Cry games. I mean, I don't remember the first one very well. I remember playing it when it came out, but we only played it multiplayer, I think, or at least I did.
Yeah. I haven't played anything since I played 4 and I played Primal. Okay. I didn't play 5 or 6. Those Ubisoft games, and I have to say more than Ubisoft now, they're all the same thing, right? Like,
yeah,
different cosplay, but the same mechanics, the same big map with markers on it, and whether it's radio towers or whatever that you're climbing up and taking territory and taking bases or outposts or whatever it is. I mean, you could make the same argument about the Horizon games. Like they're not too different from that sort of formula. So after playing 3, 4, and Primal, I kind of burnt out on it. Primal was just meh.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't have the flavor that something like Horizon had, where it's like, ooh,
Yeah.
this is cool. It was just like, oh, I'm shooting a bow instead of a gun.
Yeah, well, Far Cry, you're shooting a bow anyway. I mean, they're all basically Tomb Raider, right? It's explore a thing, get a thing, collect a thing. I will say it's worth looking up Just Cause, the Just Cause games. Not so much for anything story related, but for some of the mechanics. I have Just Cause 4, I think. And there's like a grappling hook, right? And you use that and then use a wingsuit and then use a parachute. You can use that to just move around the map. I don't even care about the rest of the game. I would love to find a mod for the game that was literally just turn off all of the enemies. I just want to fly around in my wingsuit because it's cool.
Mm-hmm. There's interesting mechanics in Satisfactory of all games. It's a factory building game, but there's exploration and world traversal and stuff in it. And the combination of, by accident, I think, folded in sort of similar mechanics to, was it Tribes? There used to be a game where, like, if you did a crouch slide, you'd actually go faster. And if you did a crouch slide into a jump, you'd jump farther than you would just, running and jumping. And then in Satisfactory, you get to a point where you get a jetpack and you can like pulse your jetpack to like just basically crouch, slide, pick up speed, and then you're floating for like 3 miles kind of thing until you run out of fuel in the jetpack. Then you start building hypertubes, which are supposed to just be like sort of pneumatic tubes where you got an entrance, you get in, blah, 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 right? But people very quickly learned, well, if you put a hypertube entrance and a short tube into another hypertube entrance into a short tube, you stack 9 of those together. By the time you get through them, you're going so fast that you can basically just shoot yourself almost like out of a rail gun to the other side of the map. So you can either parachute down or use your jetpack or something like that.
It sounds like a peasant railgun. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it is absolutely. And it's part of the fun of the game, and they didn't get rid of the fun. They said, okay, we're going to embrace this silliness. And they've added stuff like, what do they call it? Because I never use it. Like a gel pack kind of thing, like a pool filled with gel so that you can land in it from, they embrace that kind of shit.
Satisfactory is in my wish list.
Yeah, I was tempted to buy it for you over Christmas, but I knew you probably wouldn't get around to it anyway.
Not for a few months, for sure.
I have played a few games or tried to get into a few games, but haven't had the time to get into anything too deep. I have been playing a little bit more Satisfactory. I said I got to that point where it was like, I've put 140 hours in, and now I'm at the point where I know I need to put another 140 hours in. I haven't made the dive into that big commitment. I've been kind of playing along the edges and doing things like expanding my power grid and power generation shit and automating some specific parts so that I have increased quantities of that shit. But I haven't done the world overhaul that I need to do. Just been dabbling, but I did get into a couple of new games. I finished playing through Assassin's Creed Mirage, which going back a few years ago, they sort of announced that the Assassin's Creed formula was going to change. There was like the old style Assassin's Creed, which was very much sort of a spiritual successor to like the 3D versions of the Prince of Persia games that became popular for a while in the early aughts or whatever it was. And then they sort of turned them into, with the games that I was more of a fan of, kind of the Ubisoft Far Cry style model of a big open world with some sort of theme, right? Assassin's Creed Origins was mostly Egyptian sort of theme. Odyssey, which was my favorite of those style of games, was sort of classical Greek, like classical ancient Greek, just after the time of like 300. So you're dealing with a lot of like conflict between Athens and Sparta, stuff like that. Really enjoyed that. Was my favorite of them. Valhalla I never played, which was the one that's after that. That was all Vikings and stuff. And it's like, oh, I'm in, Britain or wherever the hell I'm going to. It's gray and foggy and raining. And that's all I've got to see. I'm not too interested in that. And I don't know, the idea of like raiding culture and stuff like that didn't appeal to me as a game. They decided after that game came out or while it was in development that they were going to go back and do this sort of TikTok approach where They were going to do a smaller game, which kind of harkened back more to the original style of games with some of the mechanics and stuff that made the newer games kind of interesting. They weren't going to be big, massive open worlds. They weren't huge, never-ending games. You know, finish it in 22 hours kind of thing. And then the next game would be one of the bigger games, so on and so forth. So Assassin's Creed Mirage was one of those smaller games. And I found it fine right up until the ending, which I absolutely fucking hated. I was looking for a smaller game, less commitment in a setting that was interesting. And it's like, 9th century-ish Baghdad, Abbasid Caliphate. So I don't know, we're talking somewhere 850 to 875 CE kind of thing. And I'm like, that's interesting to me. I'm in. And I played it. That was sort of the selling point to me. What I didn't realize, what the character that I was playing, it's almost like a prequel game to understanding a character from the game that I didn't play, Valhalla. Why would this game taking place in 9th century Baghdad have anything to do with Norse Viking? I don't know, except that apparently I should know the name of this person and recognize it for what it is. The reason why that's important is the entire ending of the game. I was like, I have no idea what the fuck's going on. Like, you're playing up something that is not obvious to me. The information that's required to make sense of what's going on, I do not possess. Like, did I miss something in this game? Is there something I accidentally skipped over? Was there something I was supposed to read in the game? No, there isn't.
No.
I needed to play, and it isn't even like, I don't think it was central to what was going on in Valhalla. It's kind of like it's almost like, and I don't think it was a DLC kind of thing, but like it felt like, oh, you didn't play the weird DLC to this other game that occurred before it that is thematically completely unrelated, other than it's part of that franchise. Like, no, fuck no, I didn't. I'm all for dropping references and member berries and tying things together. Like, I like when things are intertwined and woven together, but you don't make the central plot and the entire ending of a game, the climax, completely dependent on knowing what happened on the fringes of a game that the person playing this game might not have played. Like, if you wanted to do that, this should have been an expansion pack to that game, not a completely separate game marketed as something on its own. On the surface, I mean, if I looked at the real deep descriptions where it's like, go back and experience the younger years of this guy's name or whatever, if I'd have read that, I'd have been like, oh, sounds like I'm probably missing something important. But no, I looked at that. Ooh, this is a smaller, harkening back to the old school style Assassin's Creed taking place in this setting. That's really interesting. Fuck no. I won't spoil it for anybody. It's dumb. You know, like, even after I finished the game and I'm like, okay, I got to figure out what the fuck's going on. It's like Google Assassin's Creed Mirage ending explained. And I'm reading up on it. And like, my mouth is just hanging open because I'm like, they couldn't possibly be this fucking stupid. I'm reading some troll site, or, you know, so I go to another site. It's like, no, they're just this dumb, you know?
There's Star Wars did that in the prequels. There's a bunch of stuff that happens in Attack of the Clones that, I mean, it's cool to watch, but the story doesn't make any sense unless you watch the cartoons, right? It's in all franchises all over the place. But I agree, that is really, really frustrating.
Actually, that's a perfect parallel to draw. Imagine watching the prequels, watching the story of Anakin Skywalker, and then not understanding the ending at all because you had no idea who the fuck Darth Vader was. But the reason that you had no idea who Darth Vader was because they'd intentionally marketed this set of movies as something completely different. It wasn't called Star Wars. It didn't take place in the galaxy far, far away. It was a different galaxy, right? Like, that's kind of how this played out. Who the fuck's that? What's that black suit that he's wearing at the end? I thought his legs got burnt off. Who's that guy? Why is he breathing funny? That was basically the end of this Assassin's Creed game.
Oh my God, that's beautiful. You sound like me after a couple of rounds of Unreal Tournament.
Which was unfortunate because I genuinely enjoyed the rest of the game. It wasn't super deep in terms of story. It was pretty generic. The mechanics were good enough. It was a light-ish. Like, I think when I finished the game, I probably had 22 or 24 hours of gameplay into it. You know, an entertaining enough romp with a good enough story to tie it together right until the end. And then they fucked it up.
And it's the kind of thing that could be done if it was framed right. Like if it said we're traveling to the Viking and and after this Valhalla.
Absolutely. Or you could have folded enough elements into the game to give the game enough of its own context that the ending made sense even if you hadn't done it. If you hadn't played the other game, right?
Yeah. Well, like books do that. Like we spoke a lot about, books and the way that they're written. A lot of modern books, like if you read the second book in the trilogy, like the first couple of chapters is, hey, remember what happened in the first book?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could do that, right? Like frame it as a sort of an in-between where the beginning of it is like the introduction to Valhalla, and then 25 years ago, and then you play the game. And then at the end, it's like, hey, remember that thing we told you in the beginning? This is what that means.
Yeah, no. Yeah. In fact, like even if you had played Valhalla, the only way this game makes sense to you is if you remember what this wasn't the main character that you were playing. It was like an NPC type character. The only way this game makes sense is if you remembered that the name was the same.
Oh my God. You got to do a lore deep dive in order to understand, or you have to be a super alpha nerd.
It would be like if they mentioned the name Anakin in the original trilogy, right? You got that Anakin Skywalker, originally he died. Nope, he became Darth Vader. I'm your father. If they didn't make a big enough deal about that, right?
Even if, like, the only reason that the prequels make sense is because we've been steeped in the Star Wars lore for 20 years before the prequels came out. Right. And even then, like, I remember when the prequels came out thinking how frustrated I was by, I fought with your father in the Clone Wars many years ago. Well, it turns out it was like 10 years ago. Like, that's not actually all that long ago.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they retconned a lot of things, but at least when like the trailers came out, right? Like they sold it. Everybody who knew Darth Vader was, even if they didn't watch the Star Wars movies, right?
Yes,
he was iconic.
That's true.
And they did a good enough job. I remember some of the earliest trailers for Phantom Menace had that shot that never appeared in the movie of Anakin sitting beside one of those like sandstone igloos, and his shadow casts the helmet shape of Darth Vader on the little sandstone igloo thing. Perfect. This kid, I'm watching the guy who becomes that bad guy that I recognize even though I didn't watch those movies. This game didn't have any of that. It's like, fuck me.
What? 22 hours though, man. Like, honestly, that's not that much time to waste on something. And you enjoyed the rest of it, so that's good.
Yeah, but, talk about leaving a bad taste in my mouth. It's the ending. It's the climax. Like, I felt lost. I felt like I did something wrong, and apparently I did.
Yeah, well, you're supposed to play all of the games and know all of the lore, and you're supposed to have made notes as you were playing through them.
Before we move on, we probably want to do some quick table talk. I know we've been going on here for a while, but I do want to mention that I started playing the new Indiana Jones game. Not very deep into it. I haven't had the time to really sink my teeth in. It's quite interesting. It is not what you would expect it to be. You would expect, it's going to be, name brand Tomb Raider, because Tomb Raider was knockoff Indiana Jones, right? Or Uncharted or something like that. No, absolutely not. This game is slow as fuck in a good way. Like combat and action, it happens, but if it happens, you're almost doing it wrong. You spend so much time just running around puzzle solving, and it's got a really interesting mechanic for how it handles hints. Without spoiling it too much, you get a camera. It's sort of a thing that you do pretty early in the game. You have to buy a camera to take some pictures of stuff. But that becomes the tool that, like, when you want to hint for something, when you're stuck, rather than having Aloy, which you sort of complained about a lot, her barking out just random things, right? oh, maybe I should go up
Mhm.
there. Or, oh, what's that moving up there? Or whatever that you couldn't see. Instead of that happening, you pull out the camera and you start looking around, and it basically functions as like, I intentionally want a hint now. Give me a hint. What I do want to say, though, is that Troy Baker is fucking fantastic doing a younger Harrison Ford. This movie, in terms of timeline, is supposed to take place somewhere between Raiders of the Lost Ark and Last Crusade.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't know where all it goes, but right now I'm like in Vatican City during like fascist period in Italy kind of thing.
Like 1941-ish.
Yeah, I think maybe even just a little bit earlier. But anyway, you almost have to watch side by side videos. They do something that I didn't like at first, and then I really liked it. The opening of the game recreated the opening sequence from Raiders of the Lost Ark. Everything right up into the point of walking through the woods and one of your guys that's with you, you know, trying to betray you and shoot you, and then going in with Alfred Molina and doing the bag of sand switch, and then, you know, rolling big stone, yada yada. That is the tutorial. It was a little bit slow because there was just a lot of walking in the woods. It felt like a walking simulator at first, which was why I was a little frustrated with it. But I really, really enjoyed it. But like the dialogue from the movie gets recreated, and they had Troy Baker like still voicing it. They didn't try and just pull in the actual samples from the movie. And the stuff he does is, it's not like somebody doing a caricature. It's just somebody that sounds like a slightly their own take on, but genuinely almost bang on perfect young Harrison Ford, and it is fantastic. I mean, he voices almost every major character in every major franchise, so it shouldn't be a surprise that he's super talented. But this is the first game that I've played where he's voiced somebody with such a known and recognizable voice. You know, it wasn't just a character like Joel from The Last of Us or something like that. Such a recognizable voice. I think actually no, because he did, I'm pretty sure he did Joker after Mark Hamill did in some of the video game and animated stuff. But anyway, it's worth checking out even if you just YouTube it for that alone. I think once I get more time into the game, it's really going to hook me. But I'm just sort of flirting at the edges. I've probably got about 6 hours, 5 hours into it max at this point.
Well, worth checking out.
All right. Quick table talk. 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes. Let's do it. Is there anything you want to talk about related to our game? We've hit that point where we've had a hard time getting sessions going again, as expected. Weekends over the holidays. But
it's the holidays.
We did have a couple games that we fed in probably since the last time we spoke.
I think so. I think we've had two, because the notes that I made here are before our last game, which was more or less that you guys had, you know, established a base and we're starting to play house. And I'm not sure just exactly how enjoyable it is to go, hey, we're going to buy furniture. And I think we glossed over that well enough, right? Because it's something to do and talk about, but it's not something you want to go like, well, we'll put a couch here and we'll put a table there. And if that's your thing, do your thing. But I don't think that's our thing. I did want to give you some kudos for pointing out sort of at the end of this second last session that we did to say, hey, we're a treasure hunting crew. What are we doing here? Because that is kind of the whole point of the exercise, right? Mm-hmm. And the sort of last session that we did was sort of each of you getting a communication of one kind or another from various factions in the city who are interested in not necessarily acquiring your services, but finding out who you are and whatnot. Because Rainier is, you know, like you guys rescued him. He's a bit of a blabbermouth, so he's been telling people about how awesome you guys are. There will be some more, you know, people who come to you and say, hey, I've heard about you and we should do a thing. And then we did a whole big old vote thing about what the name of your crew is.
That like 2 people participated in.
More or less, yeah. Like there's between 0 and 2 votes on everything. So there's going to be a little bit of a runoff vote about what that, and I think we're probably going to end up with the status quo. But yeah,
whatever.
Anyway, you ran a holiday one shot.
I did, and I would just want to give a quick shout out to my group. It's a one shot that I should have totally predicted would turn into a 3-shot at least. We'd been on hiatus for a while, and I'll be honest, I had a little bit of burnout and was struggling to do prep for my main game. I'm coming up to this sort of final climax, and we had to turn over the player that we lost, and I sort of decided finally I'm going to fill a seat, and I'm trying to deal with that because I tried playing short, wanting to get through the climax so that I could bring in a player at a more opportune time where they could get invested and we could start, exploring hooks for their character and give them personal stakes, etc. Didn't make sense to, bring in a new character for the Avengers movie, right? That hasn't had their origin story movie yet. But
so here's the Avengers and Jim.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what it was. And I thought for sure that would be the best way to do it. And turns out that I'm just an idiot and I should have just put a player in right away because I normally play with 4. I was down to 3. And when I had 3 players and 1 player couldn't make it, I just couldn't do sessions. We tried running some sessions with 2 players, even if it was just filler material. It would be putting it kindly to say that they didn't go well. More accurately, they were kind of a fucking disaster. So I needed to have at least 4 people so that I could play with 3. Some of our best sessions would happen when we only had 3 players. Anyway, I planned a holiday one shot. I didn't want to do a ton of prep for it myself, so I'm leaning on a third-party module, adapting it for my own use. It's cliched. It's a take on how the Lich stole Christmas. And beautiful. I hadn't seen it before, but I did a little bit of research, I guess, before I picked it up. And it should be comfortably like a 3-4 if you've got a slow group that likes to take their time and smell the roses, maybe a 5-hour one shot. Our sessions are normally 3.5-ish or 4 hours long. We get together for session 1. And I'm like, okay, we should get through most of this. And I can fudge it and like skip over a level or something like that if I don't think we're going to quite get to where we want by the end of the session. And I knew I was in trouble when I did sort of a little preamble at the beginning. Like I had some Dr. Seuss style setup for it because, it's the Grinch who stole Christmas. You need a little bit of that. Like my setup for it probably wasn't any more than about 8 minutes or so. And it's like, okay, and this happens and you get whisked away. And it's a tower dungeon, multiple levels of a tower. There's 10 total levels, but they're like small rooms. Like each level of the tower is basically a room. You have to figure out either fight somebody or figure out the puzzle or whatever it is to kind of move into the next level, unlock the door, get in. It's common one-shot shit. I knew I was in trouble when it was like the hour and 30-minute mark-ish, and my players were still outside the tower.
Oh my God. He mentioned a squirrel. Is the squirrel maybe a shapeshifted shapeshifter? Should we check out the squirrel? What's in that tree? Yeah,
and it wasn't even reacting to stuff like I'd set up. Like they did a little bit of exploration stuff, but honestly, my players, like they love the role-playing stuff. So they rolled with it. Part of what I set up, like what I did in this thing is that the Lich character goes in, it's Christmas Eve. He goes into the city, he steals all the magic items. That's sort of you're going to go here and deal with it. The other thing I did, which I knew would probably slow things down, is currently in my main game, my players are level 10. Because it was a one shot, I mirrored my world on Foundry and I said, level up these characters to level 20. This is all a dream, right? Like it isn't really related to the main game other than they're playing the existing characters. And I thought it might be fun to explore sort of what a potential level 20 version of their character might be. But I stole their magic items. So we get outside and Vicky, who plays a character named Trip, I got to shout her out specifically because she had 2 interesting items which qualified as magic items that she'd earned in our game. One was the, what is it called? It's like a headband of intellect.
Okay.
Basically bumps your int up to like 19 or something like that. So with that being taken away, she made it a point to role play being a little bit dumb. Not dumb, but just slower. Like there was clearly something else that was going on. And the other thing that she'd done, and I think I've mentioned this in earlier episodes, is she decided to carve out one of her own eyes, his own eyes in character, to take this eye thing that had magical properties in hopes of like trying to get some sort of effect that was going to help the group. And I ended up doing it. It's basically like a limited use, small range anti-magic field that she can aim. Very, very limited use. It's mostly flavor. But that got taken away.
Beholder Jr.
Yeah, so we spent probably about 25 minutes on my eye's gone. What am I going to do? I need to get my eye back. Another character decided they pulled like a candle nub, like they were going to try and make an eye out of wax and then stuff it in the eye socket as a fake eye, to which I said, okay, you know what? Fuck it. I mean, this doesn't need a roll. Give me a medicine check anyway. They rolled not super high. So we role played it out that like, yeah, you sort of rounded out the bottom of the candle, you jammed it in there, but it's mostly just a stub of a candle sticking out. Now you can't close your eyelids properly. And then, you know, Druid used Druid craft and lit now you got a candle that's lit, sticking out of your eye socket. And it was stuff like that for an hour and probably 20 minutes. And it's like, okay, well, if there's this dungeon thing here, do you guys just want to do it or do you just want to hang out? Finally, they decided. Then they went trouble trying to figure out how they wanted to get in. Because it's a tower. You're level 20. You got options. It's protected by wards. The entrance has got, you know, a ward on the door. There's a magic dome over the top. There's a balcony that the doors are, you know, magically sealed and blah, blah, blah. It's all attached to the puzzles and miscellaneous shit. So they spent another half an hour, not arguing, but like, you know, kind of a tug of war about how they wanted to do it, to the point where the druid just shapeshifted into a triceratops and decided they were going to run through the door that they knew might kill them because they determined that it had a symbol ward on it, a symbol of death, which not insignificant, but probably not going to kill a level 20 character. Ran through it. Stuff started to happen. I think we got up to the second level before we were like, okay, it's been 4 hours now, so I guess we probably want to put it down here. Yep. Picked it up this week, and they got up to the second last level. And I don't do a lot of puzzles with my group, and I didn't write this puzzle, so I can't take credit. But I've told the story before about how I decided to throw sort of a more traditional D&D puzzle at my group, and it took them 3 hours, which was all the more funny because they almost nailed it by guessing the first time. It was like 4 valves that they needed to turn in a certain order to make steam get rerouted through this little dungeon thing that they were in, and they just guessed at the order, and they literally had it exactly right the first 4 steps, and or 3 steps, and they just needed to experiment. Like you could have tried it again and you would have got it right if you just did that last step wrong and it telegraphed. They'd done it right up until that last step. But of course they second guess it and overthink it, and it took way too long. Not in a way that was never fun. Like it was always fun because their characters were getting frustrated. Then they were we're not going to interact with a puzzle. We're going to try to find a way to break the puzzle. So in the holiday one shot, there's this puzzle where it's basically they find 4 potions with labels on it that just have letters on it, like 3 letters. One of them has the letters ITE, and the other one has ALL. And basically you put them together, like one of the only words you can form is the word alliteration. And there's a little note by the lich that says the only way you can get through this door is if you can use the one potion that is basically like a gaseous form. And
okay,
all the rest of them are poison. Good luck. And basically they had to pick the green one, alliteration, green, gaseous. That was the basic premise. And they spent 20 minutes making up words, and then they were making up songs, and then they were just overthinking it entirely in a good way. It was hilarious. And now it's a Christmas one shot, basically. And we're going to be running in the middle of January, a 3rd session on it. I gave them the option. I said, hey, we can finish this narratively just offline if you want and get back into our main game next week. They're like, no, we want to finish this. There's a sort of a red dragon that takes place of the lich's dog Max. One of them is currently inside the red dragon right now being digested. So they wanted to see how that was going to play out.
Yeah. That's some serious stuff.
Anyway,
man.
I don't need to get into all the details. Holiday one shot is not normally like the kind of thing I would do. I'm not a Christmassy person. You can certainly ask my wife. She will attest to that. I have really been enjoying the way they've been engaging with it. It has been barely Christmassy in terms of gameplay, but it has afforded them the opportunity to be a little bit silly, which has been fun. So shout out to my crew. You're awesome.
It does sound like you have a very good group.
I do. I really do. We've, with the missing player and sort of things having a hard time keeping games going, we've had fallen into a bit of a funk, and we decided that we were going to take basically a good chunk of December off and pick things up in the new year with a new player. And I have a person that is an acquaintance of some of them that joined in for the one shot. Originally, he just wanted to watch just to get a feel for things. And I said, oh, you might as well play along with us. We can, it's a one shot. It's no biggie. And hopefully that'll work out. Still vibe check kind of thing. Obviously, with a group that's been playing together for 2.5 years, like I don't just want to throw anyone in there. It's got to be a fit. Finding the right person is more important than finding a person. But we'll see where that goes. Even tonally, though, it was nice because, we're in Mordor still, basically, right? Like we're in the Shadowfell. Mm-hmm. We're ramping up to the big confrontation with not the ultimate bad guy, but like one of them. The ultimate bad guy for this arc. We're facing Loki instead of Thanos, and it was nice. We got a lichy Grinch who hates Christmas, makes bad puzzles.
Did you watch How the Grinch Stole Christmas over Christmas this year?
No.
It has been 100 years since I saw it, and we found it on one of the streaming services while we were down visiting Cindy's mom and watched it. And it was like, I remember this being way better.
Now, are you like talking the animation one then, not the Jim Carrey?
Yes,
atrocity.
Not the Jim Carrey. No, the "You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch." That one. Mm-hmm. And I remember as a kid thinking like, this is awesome. And I watched it again and I was like, I was an idiot. Yeah. This is terrible. Like it still has it turns all the nostalgia knobs up to 11, but it's objectively bad.
Yeah. I got to play on that a little bit with the one shot. The introduction to the one shot was all like a Dr. Seussian style poem. It was every adventurer down in Rackmaloth like Christmas a lot. And the Lich who lived just east of the city did not. Dresden, the Lich hated Christmas. The whole Christmas season. Now, don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. Could be perhaps his phylactery was too old. Could be that his brown molds weren't that cold. But I think the most likely reason of all may have been his heart was 2 sizes too small. Blah, 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 blah. That leads into him making the plan to steal the magic items so that Christmas couldn't happen. And then we stand outside the tower for a couple of hours.
Talking about why my eye is missing.
Anything else table talk before I get into like super quick parting gift here?
I think we should probably go to parting gift. I mean, it's going to be another one of those ones where someone is going to send me a message that says, holy shit, this thing is 2 hours long.
Hey, we took half of our show doc and graded out.
Yeah. Next week will be great.
Yeah.
And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Anybody want a peanut?
Super quick, organically kind of stumbled across a new YouTube creator. Did a collab with somebody that I watched and have been going through a series of videos that she's made. Her name is Lindsay Nicole. She does a lot of stuff about like animals and extinct animals and stuff like that. But the particular series that she's going through is the history of the Earth that we know of, where she's gone through like from Precambrian age to basically now, sort of eon by eon, epoch by epoch, talking about like what the world was like, just a high level of like some of the freaky animals that were there. Not super detailed. It is all very sort of digestible. her shtick is that she's just this sort of little ball of energy. I don't know how old she is, but she looks probably younger than she is. Super vulgar
Oh,
in a sort of entertaining way, while she's talking about heinous animals and shit. And it's just so fun, some of it is not like super deep. You're not going to come away feeling overly educated. Like a lot of it is just super high level stuff, but it is a blast to watch. She is charismatic as all hell, and she has her own shtick. I've talked about another guy before, Milo Rossi, who actually has done a collab with her. She's also worked with like Hank Green and some other people that I watch, but has a similar vibe where it's like, oh, he's not just another science educator. He's a guy that's doing his own thing and has his own vibe. And her thing is just this sort of energetic vulgarity. Like every 14th word is at least the F word once, like not in a way that feels forced. Like it just feels supernatural and it's fun. Check her out, Lindsay Nicole. She's got a lot more than just this series, but I do recommend the History of the Earth That We Know Of.
sounds great.
All right. Fuck off, everyone.
Before we actually leave, I have 2 quotes that I want to share with you just because things. I actually wrote them down because I didn't want to forget. So I watch a golf group called Good Good. You've probably heard of them. They're like the second biggest fucking channel on YouTube now or something. They're basically a clothing company. But anyway, there's the one guy, Matt, who said he was starting to talk about YouTube and stuff. And he said, some of my favorite YouTubers are starting to get old now. And I thought to myself, holy shit, man, YouTube has only been around for like 10 years. Some of your favorite YouTubers are getting old. And then I thought about it and I thought, yeah, like there's little, there are some YouTube channels that are old enough that you can see the people who run them aging from when they started.
Yeah. There are YouTube channels that are old enough that the creators have children that are older than they were when they started their YouTube channels. And sometimes those children have channels of their own.
Frequently. It's the next thing for Nepo babies to get involved in. The other thing is that have you ever seen the BBC show Have I Got News for You?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a US version and it's actually pretty good. Like usually you bring a show from the UK and you take it to the US and it becomes enshittified. This one is not, it's not as good and it is different, but it is very good in its own way. Like they show some really good talent. One of them, they were talking about some political figure, and I forget what he said. He said something like, I'm a black Nazi, which is just like, it's just such a weird thing to say until you realize that he said it in the comment section of a porn site, which makes it even weirder. And one of the comments that one of the panel said really resonated with me. Whatever you said on a porn site comment thread, you meant that shit. Right? Like that is not the kind of place where you're putting a patina on things or where you're trying to spin stuff. Like this is raw you. If you felt this strongly enough to write it in a comment thread on a porn site, you meant it.
Yeah.
And when I originally wrote that down, it sounded a lot funnier. And now I'm thinking, yeah, that's just true.
Here's the irony in that thought. Pretty soon, the comment sections of porn sites are probably going to be the only pure internet as it used to be place that you can find, mostly immune from bots and bullshit. I, for one, welcome our Pornhub overlords.